So, Bob, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. And I always like to start with, how do you describe what it is that you do?
I'm the water resources director, and so I'm in charge of water, sewer, and stormwater operations for the city of Burlington. So kind of all things wet is kind of how I describe it. That it comes through our department in one way or another, from the time a customer draws water from the tap to use in their house, when they flush the toilet, it goes down the drain to our sewer plant, and then when it rains, we respond to customer concerns with stormwater runoff in their yards and the streets, also in, water quality issues, and all of those components, water, sewer, and stormwater, have regulatory oversight from the state and federal level that we have to meet. So, um, all things wet and lots of regulations is what my everyday.
I love the way you teed that up. So, what would you say? I mean, it's a pretty broad. There's a lot of things you cover there. So, what would you say is your most significant challenge you're addressing as the water resources director?
Our most significant challenge is keeping abreast of regulatory changes, and also the public perception to not only enacted regulations but proposed regulations. And that's what's changed over my career is the we've gone away from the long news cycle, and now it's not even a 24-hour news cycle. It's instant news with social media and whatnot. And so we're constantly cognizant of our operations, how we're affecting our community, the community trust that's placed in us, and we want to ensure that we maintain that trust.
That's an excellent point, and interesting to hear. I think something that we would definitely want to touch on is kind of the PFAS issue, and that's a major issue, not just nationally but internationally. And want to ask you about how Burlington's response to the PFAS problem has kind of differed from other places, and what municipalities kind of across the country can draw from that.
So we've been involved with the PFAS investigation on the wastewater side of our operations since really since 2019. Um, there was some previous testing in the Cape Fear River Basin that indicated there were some high levels of different PFAS in the river. Some researchers followed that up the river and identified, especially throughout the Cape Fear Basin, but the Haw River arm. And so the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality asked all wastewater dischargers to test for PFAS in 2019 in the summer. And soon after that, we got involved with some potential litigation from a environmental group, the Haw River Assembly. And rather than fight that, we entered a cooperative agreement with them and performed an extensive study of the inputs to our wastewater plant, to one of our plants, and tested the different sewer outfalls that fed the wastewater plant, looked at our industries, and identified some major sources of PFAS, and currently are working with them all to reduce their discharge to us, because our plants in their current configuration are not designed to remove PFAS. And so anything that we can reduce at the source, thereby is reduced in the loading to our plant and our discharge.
That's a tremendous undertaking. I have to imagine you said that kicked off in 2019. So when you're thinking about kind of the 10-year outlook, so looking back 10 years to now, I have to imagine that changed the water resources division's kind of priorities pretty significantly. So I'll ask you, if that's the case, how that has affected kind of what your department has prioritized, and kind of what are some of those other priorities that may have had to shuffle around as a result of this situation.
Our staff did a great job to pick up a lot of additional work, doing all this sampling in the field, packaging samples to the lab, to a commercial lab for analysis, and responding to the various requirements of that whole investigation. And in addition, they did their normal regular jobs, regulatory testing, sampling, treating wastewater. Um, so from that standpoint, we didn't miss a beat while adding this significant investigation. But some things that were kind of put on the back burner or moved off the front burner were some major capital investments to replace equipment at the plants and also in the field with our water and sewer collection system. So that kind of slowed that whole process down, which we want to certainly keep up with replacing our aging infrastructure to again be able to provide reliable service to our customers.
So that's really interesting, Bob, when you talk about kind of needing to look at capital expenditures and what you're focusing on. And it sounds like your team did an incredible job kind of keeping things flowing. But that's where I kind of want to come in and talk about how I heard about you and how I was introduced to you with the work at the Ed Thomas plant, the Duke Energy Sustainable Solutions, worked with the city of Burlington on. So let's talk a little bit about Ed Thomas. And let's just start with, when was it constructed? How many people is it serving? Kind of its footprint. What is its purpose?
Maybe just a quick overview. We have two water plants that serve a combined population. Of Burlington's population is around 59,000. Plus, regionally we provide water to most of the small towns in Alamance County, and we also sell water to Greensboro. So we serve roughly a population probably 85 to 100,000 people as it extends out to those customers. And with either water plant, they're both connected to our distribution system, and either water plant can meet our normal daily needs. The Ed Thomas water plant is our older water plant. The original part of that plant dates back to the mid to late 40s, I guess late 40s, just after World War II, and then it was expanded in the 50s. And a lot of the pumps and equipment still are of that vintage, but it's been a very reliable plant.
Yeah, that's great. What would you? So that covered everything about the purpose and how many people it's serving. So where we came in and how I was introduced to you through DES was around backup power. And so let's talk about what was the existing backup power solution at Ed Thomas, and why was finding a solution, or why was finding something new a priority?
Because we had two water plants, we had that luxury that if one plant was out of service, whether it be for maintenance or repairs or a power outage, we often could operate the other plant, and either plant can meet the daily demands. So backup power at the Ed Thomas plant was never a high priority. However, about 4 or 5 years ago, we started investigating some operations with one of our VFD drives on one of the large finished water pumps, and had some questions with Duke about some power quality issues. And I really don't remember what the results of that study was. I think it was more our VFD drive, but through that process, we asked about the transformer that was sitting right outside the plant, which dated back to that late 1940s construction. And it was my understanding that when Duke started looking for a replacement transformer, there was not one available on the East Coast and maybe in the U.S. But we had two separate electrical feeds, so that was another to the plant. So that was another reason why there was not a major movement for backup power at Thomas plant, since Duke they were fed from two different Duke substations. However, through that process, we started talking with Duke and actually worked with them with Duke's engineers, and Duke installed a brand new service and new transformer, so we had a reliable feed to the plant. And then the other option was, do we want to replace that second feed or look at the backup power system? And so that led us to the discussions of, well, Duke offered this program where they can supply backup power, and that sounded appealing, because our guys are great at treating water and working on water equipment. We have backup generators at other facilities, but there's been lots of just over the years, um, since we aren't generator people, we have to bring a contractor in to work on them. There seemed to be less and less available contractors, and we had more and more um, issues as equipment aged. So that kind of led us to the discussion of Duke's program.
Why did you all settle on Duke then?
So we ran the numbers. We had installed a generator at one of our wastewater plants. So we had some fairly recent costs, comparable size generator. And when Duke made their proposal, we looked at if the city did the traditional hire an engineer, design, bid, build, own a generator, or hire a contractor, install it, we would own it, operate it, versus Duke's program. And over the 10-year proposed lease agreement, essentially with Duke, we look to be saving about $1.3 million between operation, maintenance, and the capital costs.
Wow, that's about put as concisely as I can imagine with these types of projects. That and so that project is completed. I want to touch a little bit too on the JD McIntosh plant, because I know that is something else. You mentioned having two plants to begin with, and from what I understand, that project is either in motion. I know it's not completed. Maybe it hasn't quite started yet. But let's talk a little bit about the McIntosh plant as well.
The McIntosh water plant, we operate in tandem with the Ed Thomas water plant. Both plants are connected to the distribution system and serve regionally about 59,000 people within the city of Burlington, upwards of 85 to 100,000 people when you consider our other municipal customers in Alamance County and some customers. We sell also sell water to Greensboro, so that customer base is much greater than our city population. The McIntosh water plant was most recently upgraded in 1993 when the McIntosh Dam was put into service and impounded the lake. And that plant was originally constructed and there was no backup power. In the early 2000s, after back-to-back ice storms in the area, our leaders at the time convinced the city council that, hey, we need a backup generator here, even though the plant was on the same circuit as the hospital and some other high priorities for Duke Energy to restore service. We still saw the need to get the water plant up and running as soon as we could to be able to provide water to the community. So in 2004, a 2 megawatt generator was installed. City hired an engineer, did a traditional design, bid, build project, and that generator has served us well through the years. However, as it has aged, we have run into problems with finding parts for switch gears and even finding contractors that will work on it. And so we had just completed the Ed Thomas project with Duke and began discussions with, what would be the possibility of replacing this generator under that program. And this past summer, we entered into a contract to do just that. When we looked at those numbers versus a design, bid, build, we looked at probably about a 10-year savings of $1 million on that project. So not quite the same as the Ed Thomas, but still a significant project. It's a bigger generator, so I think that all rolled into those numbers.
I remember you mentioning to me when we talked previously about there was a particular issue with one of the facets of the generator, and not being able to get replacement parts for it. What was the deal with that?
We were having trouble with the generator cooling, and our contractor at the time determined that there may be an issue with the fan. We could not find a replacement. We had one fabricated, and then actually did find a replacement. So I think we're using the replacement fan now. But that was about a 2-year ordeal while we kind of nursed that generator along to keep it operating, to be available.
Is the new solution there? Is it just another backup generator? Is there anything different with the system from what you all have going now?
It's a very similar system. I think the most recent communications I've had with the Duke engineers is that it will be slightly um, upgraded in size, so it may be able to handle some potential upgrades that we have coming in the future. But it's a very similar setup to our existing generator setup, just in a new location right near the current generator.
So this has nothing to do with backup power, but wanted to touch on a special feature of the Macintosh plant with how you have dealt with nesting geese in the area.
So probably about 7 or 8 years ago, or longer than that, we've dealt with geese just on the plant site, and they would, of course, attracted to the lake, but they like the shoreline. They like to be around the plant, and we had goose droppings everywhere, and it got to be a nuisance. And so we got the idea of, maybe we can get a dog that may help to shoo them away. So we worked with Burlington Animal Services and adopted a dog from the shelter. Staff named him Tux McIntosh because he's black and white and kind of looks like he has a tuxedo. And he came on board and did such a great job shooing away the geese that he's still around the plant, but he doesn't have a lot of geese work to do so much anymore. But when they're around, he does continue to do that. But he's kind of been the mascot now for several years.
That's fantastic. Too effective at his job. Want to close here talking a little bit about wastewater treatment and water resources and kind of electrical importance broadly. So I want to start with, how do you think water departments are determining what to prioritize just budget wise?
Well, I think that we're all looking at the current regulations and pending regulations relating to PFAS. There's some proposed um, requirements that water plants will have to meet. Um, the EPA is supposed to release their final guidelines maybe first quarter here 2024, and we'll have 3 to 5 years to meet those requirements. And for many water providers, and Burlington included, that's going to involve major capital projects to install some sort of barrier technology that's going to remove PFAS from our source waters. So that's a priority. But again, just providing clean, safe, dependable source of water to our customers to maintain that level of trust with our customers is always the highest priority. And replacing our infrastructure and uh, to again to provide that reliable service and doing so in the most cost efficient, affordable manner to keep our rates affordable for everybody. We're all struggling with all these increased costs, increased chemical costs, inflation, um, fewer contractors doing the work, driving up prices. So it's all rolled into a daily challenge of being able to provide water and sewer service, just like many other utilities and businesses across the country.
Why do you think? So I know that infrastructure is really broad. There's a lot of places where you could be spending those types of resources. Why do you think that backup power and energy resilience should be a priority for water departments?
Well, certainly at the plants, if we don't have power, we can't produce drinking water, and we can't pump it out to our customers. We can't treat wastewater when it comes to the plant, and untreated wastewater that's discharged to the streams would create environmental hazards. And so, having reliable power, both normal everyday feeds plus backup systems, is very important to be able to meet those needs and serve our customers and protect the environment.
Excellent. And you've touched on this a little bit, but want to ask you this one too. With the relationship you described with Duke, as far as our engineers coming in and designing the project and building things out and managing it, we talk about that as energy as a managed service. Why do you think that the managed service model makes sense for municipalities on these sort of projects?
So we're not in the energy business. We're in the water and wastewater business. By working with Duke Energy to provide these backup power systems, that relieves the burden from our staff to operate and maintain the generators, or having to chase down a contractor to work on the generators. It's a turnkey service. Duke has promised and so far has done a great job of providing the generator, providing the backup power, providing the monthly operations and testing, and they will also provide service and fueling, when the generators are needed and in use. And that is just one less thing that we have to worry about in those kind of emergency situations where we need to be focused on providing water and sewer service.
Bob, I really, really can't thank you enough, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.